Happy Friday, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be. It's the Friday before a holiday weekend here in the U.S., so we're pretty excited. You're between me and a 4-day weekend. Um, let's get going. This is the Business Survival Call Sales and Marketing Series for June 2017, and this is our last one. This is 12th in the series, and I want to thank everybody for joining us and having been with us for the past year. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot about how to do something like this. I hope you've gotten some things out of it. There's a small chance that I might renew this and do it again if you guys express some interest, but I have some other ideas that I think will be um, worth your time and attention. So I'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. So if you've got some questions for me, please type them in at any time. Use the Q&A box. That's the best place to do that. I don't often get to see the chat box during our presentations, but do type something in, and I'd be happy to address that for you. So so what's on my mind? As I said, this is the last survival call of the series, and it's been a good experiment, and I've enjoyed it. I've looked forward to it. I've liked putting these things together and picking out the questions that you've sent in and diving into them. Answering questions is kind of what I do for a living, so this is very natural and comfortable for me, but we need the questions in order to do it. What I've decided to do, unless a bunch of folks would like to renew this, but regardless, I've started a private Facebook group, and emphasis on private. It's called Intentional Success, and if you will send me your personal email address that you use for your Facebook ID, I would be happy to join, add you to the list. If we're already friends on Facebook, I can add you to the list as well. Just let me know. I've sent out some invitations. I haven't heard back from everybody. We're posting some content on there now. So it looks like this. And what I hope to do with this is kind of move the idea of a community that talks to each other, supports each other, asks questions and shares answers, and even giving you the opportunity to provide some feedback to your peers. This will take some time to develop, and I think that we'll have to get used to the idea. But I'm going to post some content on this Facebook page that I'm not going to post on other pages. Mostly in my Simpson Group page, we post blog posts and newsletters, repost newsletters and things to let people know. We get a little bit of interaction there, but it's not going to be like this. I want this to be as interactive as possible. I want to ask questions and get some answers. I want you to ask questions and get some answers. I'll be sharing a new video series starting in August on this page. It's 20 episodes, 20 weeks on sales and marketing. I think you'll like it. I won't share it anywhere else in social media, though you will eventually find it in the Simpson Group digital library as well. So if you haven't done that already, send me the email you used for Facebook, and I'll add you, and you can start posting stuff there. I will answer every question you post there. I don't live on Facebook. It won't be in real time. However, I might move this format of webinar to Facebook and do this as a Facebook Live. So we'll do it on the private Facebook group. It won't be open to the general public. It's only going to be open to you. And it's everybody who's been involved in the survival call. It's my clients. It's people who've attended my workshops. So this is a small group of people who are focused on their business, who've taken time to invest in their business through me and through my products and through my offerings. And I want to keep giving back to you and help you stay engaged and help you connect with other business owners and business leaders, because I think that's what makes us all better. So it'll be a work in progress. I'm sure I'll make some mistakes, but please let me know that I can add you, and that'll give me some impetus to put some stuff on there. All right. This being the last one and the last of the survival calls, I have a few things I want to talk about, but I didn't fill this up with content. I also know it's a holiday weekend, and many of you would like to get on with your celebrations and family time as I would. But please, if you've got some questions, go ahead and post them. I want to share a story, and I told part of the story in the executive call a little while ago, but I'm going to tell a little bit more complete version of it to you. It's the story of stopping selling. I had to get a client to quit selling. I know it sounds unusual, doesn't it? They were they were selling too much, and it was killing them. What I've done in this particular case that I'm going to talk about, we took a customer from being a proposal mill. They were just cranking out proposals nonstop. Their close rate was less than 20%. And we made a really only one tactical change, but we made a huge strategic mindset change into moving them into a customer focused business. And I want to talk a little bit about how that worked. Now, the backstory is that we, yeah, I'll talk about this differently. The backstory of this is that I was hired by this client for a completely different reason. And once that reason was resolved, we started looking at the overall health of the business, and we discovered that they'd been growing steadily every year, sometimes 10% or more, and the company was over $10 million in revenues, and was doing quite well on the revenue side. They were doing horribly on the profit side, and every year they got bigger and their profits got smaller, and their profits were, well, kind of in the red. Very concerning because of the more they grew, the less money they made. That, by the way, that's not a good thing, in case you're wondering. So I took a look at what was going on. I found the answer was in their financials very clearly. I only had to ask one question to verify, but in their financials, I looked at all the elements of their business, having studied their processes and knowing what their process were. I looked at all the elements of their business that were involved in the selling process. In other words, the cost of sales. So for you financial people, this is not cost of goods sold. This is below the line. This is a overhead expense, the cost of sales. Salespeople, marketing support, proposal development support, any parts of salaries that were devoted to generating proposals. And as I said, this company was a proposal mill. And what we found was for a company that was, in the healthy, plus $10 million range, was spending about $1.8 million on cost of sales. In other words, almost, between 16 and 18% of their revenue was in customer acquisition. Normal for our industry is 8 to 10%. So this was a $1 million overspend in a very critical area. So the one question I needed to ask of the sales manager or the person who was acting in that role was, okay, what's your close rate? And well, they didn't measure it, but he took a wild ass guess and said it was less than 20%. And I think he was being optimistic and putting a little bit of a polish on it, but their close rate was abysmal. And the amount of time and energy they put into proposals was phenomenal, unbelievable. They were lots of value add, lots of custom designs and scenic treatments and renderings and videos and sales pitches for every project or every project of a certain size, which was a majority of what they were proposing. They had a huge number of people who spent at least half of their day working on proposals and not actually working on jobs that were sold. And even when they were working on jobs that they were sold, they were getting constantly pulled away to work on another proposal that they weren't going to win. It was very frustrating, very, very frustrating. So how do you turn a company like this? Well, you start by showing them a big number, show them $1 million worth of profit that they frittered away on nothing. I mean, literally got nothing for it at all, except the pride of saying they had some really awesome looking proposals, and people said, "Oh, that was a great pitch. We hired somebody else." It was difficult, but they quickly realized when I could show them the math what was going on here. So here's the business that I found, and I use this chart with many companies when I'm doing analysis to help them understand where they are and sometimes what they've done to themselves. the dialogue in the organization from a sales standpoint of view, the little bit of marketing they did, and certainly all the business development, which they were really good at business development. I mean, they were making connections and they were networking, and people were sending them RFPs and letting them buy them drinks. That part was working really, really well. They were just getting RFPs for stuff they had no business doing. And then they weren't treating the RFP well enough to actually win it. So they didn't spend any time or energy on their brand. All the energy that should have been spent on the brand of the organization was spent on the personas of the business development people. So they had business development people selling themselves instead of selling the company, even though they really felt they were selling the company. And they talked about product. They didn't talk about brand. They didn't talk about the customer. They didn't talk about outcomes. They talked about the product. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. This will be great for you. Blah 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 blah. Can we do a proposal for you? Please send me your RFP. And people would send them an RFP, and I guess make them go away. And so they were a proposal mill. And sometimes when they tried to be customer focused and they tried to take a little bit more time and energy, the fact that their brand was weak meant that the customer was somewhat indifferent. So being more customer focused wasn't helping them. And customers going, yeah, well, thanks for paying attention to me. I guess you really want my business, but I don't feel any differently about you for the extra attention. And then sometimes they would focus on their brand, and they would be, talk about their designs and try and make their designs more valuable to the buyer. And that only had the effect of the customer expecting them to do better. And I'll give you the perfect example. This company gets a chance to do some pretty major projects. A $500,000 project is not unusual for them. That's how they get to be over $10 million. They had a proposal for a major client who they'd done a job for every other year for a number of years, a long-time client. And they were a little concerned that the client was shopping this particular year. So this is the first time they kind of put it out to bid. And so my client, rather than focusing on the customer and their own brand, focused on their product and cut their price. So they looked at how to put a whole bunch of stuff in the proposal, and they figured out how to save them money. So they put lots of value add, free into it. And they wrote $1 million proposal. Now, all of us right now are going, wow, I want $1 million job. Cool. Well, they didn't get it. And the reason they didn't get it at first was, of all the responses that the customer got back, my client's was the lowest by $1 million. The next closest proposal was $2 million. There was a proposal that was $2.6 million. My client is completely misread because they weren't customer focused. They were only focusing on their product. They didn't have a brand to reinforce and sell. They basically whittled the transaction down to the lowest common denominator, and the client didn't believe their price. Even though they know they'd done a good job for them in the past, they said, there's no way you can deliver the job that we want at the price that you're suggesting. The customer, thank goodness, said, why don't you guys go back to the drawing board, okay, revisit our meetings, come up with a better pitch, and quote this again. And they told them, I said, the company we're looking at hiring is spending, their quote's over $2 million. We're not done negotiating with them. But just to give you an idea of how far off you are, and it was quite embarrassing. It's quite embarrassing to get that kind of news. Well, fortunately, they did rework it. They did listen to the customer. They did come back and say, okay, Tom, what did we do wrong? And we put brand into their proposal. We put the value in for all the things that made the job unique and special for the customer, and made sure that the value was actually in there so the customer could see it, because they feel like they were actually getting something rather than having it thrown in for free and then perhaps be subpar. And they came back with an improved project, an improved creative, and a $1.6 million budget, and they got the work. Sounds like a wonderful success story, but it was almost a disaster, and it was indicative of how much business they were messing up by having this proposal mill process. So It's not enough just to pay attention to a customer every once in a while. It's not enough to talk about your brand and every once in a while and focus on the value of what you do. You have to focus on the customer and your brand all the time. You got to make these things two things that are incredibly important. You have to show them together. The customer has to see themselves doing business with you, a successful, engaged organization. And if you do that well, the customer will want more from you. And that's the turnaround story of this client. Yeah, sure, we've got other, we're doing better in operations. We've got better labor scheduling, or we're spending less on travel, all those things. But the big change in this company is, where do they put their energy in the client development process? And they moved it away from internal, how can we throw more free stuff onto this job, and show off all the things that we could do, whether the client needs or wants those things or not, to externally focus, what is this client looking for? How do we respond thoughtfully to their needs and requests? How do we make sure that our brand is positioned well in this conversation? And most importantly, how do we walk away from business that we can't be successful at? Now, their close rate has not dramatically improved, but the jobs that they are closing have skyrocketed in value. Therefore, their profits have followed. So we've had a huge turnaround. They're still growing. They've sold a little bit more business than they did the year prior, but their profits have increased dramatically because they're now getting the value out of that business, and they have clients coming back and asking them to do more things besides the event that they just produced. So these are the kinds of stories that get me really excited and make it fun to do what I do. When it works really, really well. So what do we get out of this? What can you learn from that client's case study? I talk about sales, operations, and finance being a three-legged stool of a business. Within sales, there's another three-legged stool, and it's the marketing, business development, and sales, the actual salesmanship that goes with that. You've got to balance these three things. And in my previous example, it was out of balance. Business development, the business development leg of the stool, was really long, and marketing and sales were really low. They weren't doing the marketing and branding to position themselves well, and their sales team were not engaged at a high enough level to provide the information or even get the information to win better business. It was all business development driven. So if you get it right, lots of great things happen. However, if you just focus on marketing and business development and you don't have the sales skills to understand the customer needs and then close the business, in other words, put the value in front of them in the right way and close the business, your close rate's going to be low. Okay, clearly that was a condition in the client I just talked about. If you're good at business development and good at sales, then maybe your marketing, okay, is putting you in the wrong brand position. So if you leave marketing out, the client's not going to see the brand that you actually are. They're going to make up their own brand, and it might not be good. And if you're good at marketing and you're good at sales, but you don't focus on business development, you're not going to have enough leads to keep your pipeline full. And the reason you want to keep your pipeline full, we all know, is so that you can say no to better jobs. You need to say no to jobs all the time. You need to have enough business in your pipeline so that you can pick and choose the opportunities. That is the goal. That is the measure of success of a sales and marketing program. The ability to exercise judicious no's tells me that you're on the right track. And if you can't afford to say no to a job that's in front of you on any given day, then we've got to go back and figure out which leg of the stool we need to bolster up to help you be more successful. So I like that story. I've told it many times. I've put a little bit more anecdote into it each time because there's a lot of things going on in that story. All right. What else are we going to talk about here today? This is a great segue to obviously a sales pitch because, well, sometimes I have to do that. I developed the Jumpstart Sales and Marketing Workshop, which is August 1st and 2nd in Dallas. You need to look into it because of that last story. that whole idea of understanding how marketing, business development, and sales work together, they work hand in hand. Even if you're one person, you still have these three things that you have to balance. I'm one person. I have marketing, I have business development, and I have sales. I have to do all of these things. I have to do them effectively to grow my business. Jumpstart Sales and Marketing I've put together so I can help teach more people how to do this. I think this is the biggest challenge in our industry right now. I think this is where we need the most help, and I think that a lot of the documentation and training and books and seminars and things that you can get to out in the world don't understand our industry well enough to tell you how to apply it in your unique situation. That's why I'm here. You know, I'm the AV industry guy. I understand your business. I understand your language. I understand why you do things and why you don't do things. So this is really for you. This is a team event because it is marketing, business development, sales in that order. I want to spend 25% of the time talking about marketing, 25% talking about business development, 25% talking about sales, and 25% tying it all together and answering all the questions that you might have to help you go back and effectively apply this back in your business. Okay, why? You know, if you haven't done something like this, if you don't have someone like me helping you work through these issues in your business, then you're missing out. And this is not expensive. I mean, let's face it, you can spend years trying to get information, but if you go to the Stimson Group, go to the store, you can send 2 people for $2,500 plus your travel expenses. I mean, how many gigs do you have to win to pay for that? Okay, how many more clients do you need that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise for this? Is there any way that you could possibly get out of this event and not be better at something? All right, if nothing else, I'll teach you how to pick a better wine. All right, so check this out. Send 2 or 3 people. I think everybody, almost every company that's attending is sending 2 people. Several are sending 3 people. You know, marketing, business development, sales. Sometimes some owners are coming. I have one client that's sending 4, just because, well, they have so many people, they need at least 4 to come to make penetration inside their organization. So figure out what's right for you. Limited number of seats. Registration will stop when the campaign says it'll stop, which, by the way, for you guys, you should know, I think it's July 14th or July 16th. So it's only in a couple of weeks. So once registration is closed, I'm not going to reopen it. I'm not going to add any more seats. I have enough people to do the event right now. I'd like to have a few more, but at some point in time, yeah, I want to have a summer, have a vacation. So check it out. Well, nobody sent me any questions this week. Nobody's posted any questions. So I'm going to talk about my vacation. All right. Why? Why am I going to talk about my vacation? I find for many of us, a lot of us are gearheads, right? We love talking about our technology. We want to talk about the new equipment we saw at Infocom. We want to talk about everything except what the customer wants to talk about. And what we all have in common with customers is we're human, and we have lives, we have families, and hopefully we do some things. And this is my entreaty to you to go have a life. You need to have a life. You need to have life experiences. You need to do things so that you have stories to tell. If you want to be involved in a conversation, if you want to survive another party, another networking event, and you're not an outgoing, extrovert type person, if you're like me, then you've got to learn how to tell some stories. And well, guess what? I did something that gave me a whole bunch more stories. Not, I got plenty of stories, but now I have better stories. I actually have stories that I think are pretty darn interesting. But I'm going to share a little bit about this event with you, and I'm just going to kind of talk while the little slidey thing goes on here. I wasn't at Infocom this year because there's me going, holy crap, this is way better than work. I went down the Grand Canyon. I went down the Colorado through the entire Grand Canyon, which actually means you go through Marble Canyon before you get to the Grand Canyon, and then you'll end up in Lake Mead. So I traveled basically from the bottom of Lake Powell to the middle of Lake Mead. on an 8-day trip, 7 nights, sleeping on the beach like that, sleeping on the, in primitive campgrounds. But then we got to do really awesome stuff like this. The fascinating thing to me was I thought I went down this trip to go see the Grand Canyon, to see this picture right here, which, by the way, I could see something like that every minute of the trip. All I had to do was look around. Beautiful, beautiful images. But I got to do this. I got to, eat some great food cooked by some wonderful guides. I had to meet some wonderful people. I got to listen to nothing and everything. I listened to water. It's wonderful to go to sleep next to rapids and hear nothing but that, to look up in the sky and see stars, or see a moon that was so bright you could read a book by it. Great stuff. It was a very humbling experience. I was humbled by the size and the magnitude of the canyon and the geology that formed it over millennia, millions of years, tens of millions of years. There's great stories about taming the river. There's stories about, government wanting to build more dams and fill the entire thing in with water. Crazy stuff that I didn't know about before I went down the river. We busted a prop through a major rapid. One small error by the guide, and boom. Those were my brothers, by the way, who I was traveling with. So nonstop beauty, great time to think, great time to experience things like this beautiful stream that we walked up and did stuff like this. That's my brother doing a little tubing at the one spot. There's more things in the Grand Canyon than I can begin to describe, and I didn't even know they were there. A lot of times sitting on the boat, just sharing stories, learning about. There's 22 other people on the 2 boats that I traveled with, tourists. I know everybody's life story. We had that much time together to learn about each other. We had a great time listening to each other and learning about each other. Met some great guides who I was totally impressed with. If you're interested in doing a trip like this, call me. I will tell you about this company. I'll tell you what was involved. Very limited number of people. That's me and my brothers again. Very limited number of people can take this trip per year. The Park Service keeps the number of boats and people on the river to a minimal number. I think only 1,200 people a year go down the river. So it's kind of a scramble to get a reservation. This little video here is typical. There are some great rapids, and there's some wonderful side trips, but 70-80% of the trip was this. Just moving down the river, listening to the water, and watching the scenery change. And you're going to go around, you go around a bend, and all of a sudden the scenery is different, and you don't know what you're going to find until you actually get there. It's unbelievable. Now, if you're at a dinner party or something and somebody's having, talking about their trip, and if you're doing a good job of listening, what you should be thinking of are questions to ask them. Okay? If somebody's sharing an experience with you, your job is to ask a question. Get them to expand on. Something's got to be interesting to you. If you're in sales, if you're in business development, if you're in marketing, you've got to learn how to be interested in things so that you can learn how to be interesting. And I struggle sometimes, I think, with being interesting. And it's nice to take a trip like this. I travel all the time. And I'm going to Kuala Lumpur next week. I'm going to go to Australia next month. But this was a trip that was just pure vacation. It was pure just for the heck of it. It was pure, this is a bucket list item that I had a rare opportunity to capitalize on because my brother put the trip together. It never occurred to me to do something like this. But now I've got some great stories that have nothing to do with consulting. They have nothing to do with video projectors. They have nothing to do with sales or sound systems or any of the other things that we talk about every day in business. And I hope I can have more fun visiting with people because I have something to share. All right, so enough of my vacation. I want to share another business story with you. Stories are important in the selling process. And I learned early on in my career that I needed to have stories at the right story at the right moment to help the customer understand, um, the brand they were buying from, the type of organization they were buying from. And I'm going to date myself here, because this is old video talk that I'm going to talk about. But I learned how to do counterintuitive selling, because intuitive selling doesn't work. If you do what people expect you to do, they quit listening very quickly. But if you say something that's counterintuitive, then all of a sudden they're leaning forward and find out what's going on here. If you have any credibility at all, counterintuitive selling is a way to make some headway. And I'm the type of person who can argue any side of an argument, so counterintuitive comes naturally to me. However, there are times when it's absolutely appropriate, and this is one of those times. So back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and video, broadcast video was the standard. And if broadcast video was 300 lines of composite resolution, you've got better video on a 10-year-old iPhone than you did in broadcast in 1990. In doing video projection, the trend, the best practice was to, put in a broadcast switching system, down convert any computers that you may have had to an NTSC signal, and use a composite or component signal to division mix or switch through your system and send it to your video projectors. However, if you sent a component video signal or a composite video signal to a video projector, the signal would fall apart over, after about 100 feet, it would start to degrade dramatically. And projectors were CRT projectors back then, and they were very unforgiving with bad signals. They were like any monitor. They were like a reference monitor, and they would show you all the garbage in your signal. So the best practice at the time was to put in what today we would probably call a scaler, an up converter, but it was called a line doubler. And it basically took the NTSC signal and doubled the number of lines, raised the refresh rate on it, did some interpolation between the lines to make the image look sharper. In other words, to send a higher resolution signal to the projector, which would travel farther, which solved the distance problem. It solved the degradation problem, but it changed the fundamental nature of the image into something that looked different, but it looked okay. I worked for a company that didn't like that look. I worked for a company that our standard for video projection was I wanted the 16-foot wide screen to look like the 13-inch reference monitor that was in the control bay. And we found that we couldn't do that with line doubling. So my counterintuitive sales was when line doubling showed up in an RFP, I would have a conversation with the client, say, hey, thank you for your RFP. I've got a couple of questions here. I see that you got Faruja line doublers in here. Can you help me understand why these are important to your project? And they will talk about how, well, they had bad video and they put line doublers in, the video became good. And I said, okay. If I could give you good video without using line doublers, would you be interested? And they said, well, we've always had success for line doublers, blah, blah, blah. But, these things were several $1,000s a week. They were stupidly expensive. They were more than the video projectors themselves. And I said, here's what I can do for you. I can give you better video for less money by taking out this compensator in the line doubler. Are you interested to hear why it works? And I would explain to them how we did things differently and how we didn't use a component video signal in the traditional YRB format with sync on green, which is what you would use in a broadcast studio in a control bay, but we used RGB sync video, which stripped the green off, put it separately, and gave us better control over the red, green, and blue, preserved the contrast ratios over long distances, allowed us to send a signal 600 feet without any degradation, and it eliminated the need for any line doubler because I had basically a beautiful signal, beautiful high density, high resolution signal in video format that didn't require any extra processing. And we did demos and shootouts all the time to prove that. And it really came into play on a major job that we were selling and for an IBM event, and it had 14 screens. Well, that would be 14 line doublers, which on this job, which was actually a long job, and it was like 6 weeks. It was a 6-week event. That was, 14 line doublers at 628. That was $100,000 of budget. It's not hard to sell counterintuitively when you tell the client, not only can I give you better looking video, I can save $100,000 off your budget. Are you interested in that? And we got the job, and we had the job for many years, and it was because we were able to do things like that. So that type of story that comes up all the time, when you're dealing with a client who questions your technology or your solution, it's great to have a story that you can pull out. And I've used that story for years and years later as we introduce new products and new video projectors long after this mattered. But I use it as an example of how we as an organization spent the time and energy to find better solutions, that we didn't accept the status quo. We didn't, just because you could throw a piece of equipment in there to solve a problem doesn't mean that you shouldn't have solved the problem sooner. And that was our philosophy. That was part of our brand and who we were. And there's a story that reflects the brand. The brand is, we understand where problems come from and we fix them at the source. We don't put a Band-Aid on them later. And we had lots of stories like that. But that was, for me, that was the first story that exemplified that brand. So find your business stories that convey who your brand is. I can't emphasize that enough. All right. This is I've probably shown this slide somewhere to you before. I want to bring it back again because I think it matters, and I think it matters a lot right now. We need to have value proposition in our organizations. Value proposition is important for how we sell. I just gave you a value proposition story. It's a branding story. Your value proposition has probably 4 distinct qualities, or you can have 4 different value propositions. The lowest common denominator of a value proposition, the generic value proposition, to me is, it's the one that everybody has. We have the best people. We have the best product. Okay, there's a generic value proposition. Hey, we're here. We're alive. There's oxygen passing through our veins. Okay, that's a generic value proposition. The next level of value proposition will focus on value. So yeah, we do good work, but we also do it for a good value or a good price. The third level of value proposition introduces the concept of brand. And I just give you a branding story. And this is how we start to introduce brand. How is my company actually unique or differentiated from these generic or value-based value propositions that you're encountering? And then the fourth tier is the unique value proposition. And while it sounds tempting that we should all be unique, the fact is it's actually very hard to do, but it's something to aspire to. So, looking for opportunities to be somewhat unique. And, our position, and in that last story, our position on Faruja line doublers, which quickly fell out of favor. They'd been hot for 10 years, and then within 3 years, they were gone. They were completely off the marketplace. Our unique position on video imaging fell back down to a brand value because you can't be unique forever. Once other people start adopting the uniqueness or embracing the same idea, you lose that position. You need to go find a new one. Now, we also need to focus on relationships. So we have a value proposition that we have control over in our business, and then we have a relationship with the customer that we need to focus on. And relationships also have tiers. The first relationship we often have with customers is price. And I remember when I first started selling, and it was in 1991, when I had my first sales conversation as an AV production rental salesperson, instead of the staffing company that I'd had for many years. It focused on price. The client says, "Hey, I'm interested in talking to you, but you need to at least put a better price on the table than what I'm getting." And so that was the first level of relationship: is can we overcome the pricing conversation? The next level of it is, do you have some flexibility in what you offer? And this correlates very much with your value proposition. If I have a value-based value proposition, if I'm matching your needs and budget to what I provide, then I have to have a flexibility relationship that says, here's where I can give you a better value. Here's where you need to spend some money, and be able to have those kinds of conversations with the client. So many of us, we all get past the price conversation pretty quickly, and sometimes we step into the flexibility conversation, but we need to spend some more time and energy on that. The third level of relationship is expertise. Okay. The reason I like to tell the line doubler story is because I was leveraging my relationship with the client as an expert and using that expertise to reinforce the value proposition of my brand. And why am I doing all of this? Well, you'll see in just a minute. And then the fourth level of relationship is immersion. Immersion relationships mean that people come to you regardless of their problem. My old boss, Tom Alford, and I don't know if he'll remember saying this, but I remember hearing him say, if my client wants their car washed, I hope they call me. Now, many of you are thinking, oh, I don't want to be degraded like that. No. What he was saying was he wants a client who says, you know what, my car wash doesn't do the job I want. I bet Tom Alford can get me the job, get me the car washing that I really need. That's an immersion relationship. I'm going to come to you first for everything and let you help me find the best possible solution. So that's you couple that with a unique value proposition, and you've got a fantastic situation. And the reason this matters is money. This is how you make money. The generic and price-driven value propositions and relationships are companies that focus on product. If you're product focused, remember the example I gave at the top of the webinar talking about that business that was a proposal mill, completely focused on the product. They focused on how they did things, not what they did. They focused on the how instead of the what. As they moved into the focus on the customer and what the customer wants and what the customer needs, it allowed them to apply higher levels of relationship and emphasize higher levels of value proposition to yield better results in terms of the value of the job. They sold more business at a better profit for a more engaged customer that was more likely to do business with them again. I created this slide many years ago in a keynote to a bunch of folks in the industry to help them understand that the transactional selling of the past, the product-focused life that we've all come from as AV geeks, okay, is over. It's done. It's all about the customer now. You've got to focus the customer. You've got to get in front of the customer. You've got to get ahead of their RFP. You have to anticipate their demands, and you can't win with product because everybody has the same products. Everybody does the same thing. Everybody actually does it pretty well. Okay? The only way you're going to differentiate yourself is by having a better brand and having a better relationship with the customer. There you go. So I think that's a great note to wrap up this series on. If you guys have some more questions, feel free to type them in. But I'm not afraid to wrap up early, given that we all have some holiday time to get involved in. So hopefully you're going home early, or you're already home. Knock yourselves out. Don't forget to reach out to me if you want a free introductory conversation. Happy to do it all the time. I've done 3 this week. Spent an hour and a half with a guy yesterday on this 20-minute free introductory conversation. That's just how I am. I enjoy it. If I can help you, I'll keep talking. I'll keep listening. So don't hesitate to call. I don't do a sales pitch. I'm happy to tell you what it is and how I do it and what it might cost, but you're always welcome to call me. And you guys especially, if you're watching this video, you're important to me. You are always welcome to call me if you've got a problem, something I can help you with. If we need to do business one day, we'll do business one day. But right now, let's take care of you, and I'm happy to do that. So thank you again for being involved in the survival call this past year. It's been a great learning experience. I hope you get a lot out of it. Don't forget to take advantage of your library of subscription, your digital library. We're adding new content all the time. I talked to my assistant yesterday. There's more stuff on there already. I think I still have about 100 videos that haven't made it over to the library yet. So stay tuned. There's lots more content coming to you every month. So without, with no more questions, let me say, hey, happy holidays. Go have a great July 4th here in the U.S. or a great weekend wherever you might be. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. Bye.